In December 1968, 3 humans traveled 250,000 miles into deep space. They did this before NASA had ever flight tested a crewed lunar lander. To understand why they took that monumental risk, we have to look back at the chain of events that made it necessary. In January 1967, a cabin fire on the launch pad claimed the lives of the Apollo 1 crew, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. That tragedy halted the entire program, forcing a complete safety redesign of the command module that decimated NASA's schedule. 21 months later, the crew of Apollo 7 took the redesigned spacecraft into low Earth orbit. During their 11-day flight, the new systems performed nearly flawlessly. The command module was finally certified as safe. With the command module now proven, NASA found itself looking at an unexpected operational window. If they were willing to take a massive institutional risk, they could drastically accelerate their timeline for reaching the moon. The primary obstacle to that timeline was the lunar module. Development delays with the lander were severe, creating a massive bottleneck that threatened to push President Kennedy's deadline of a lunar landing before the end of 1969 completely out of reach. Knowing they couldn't afford to wait, mission planners made a radical decision. They stripped the lunar module from the next flight manifest entirely. Instead of a routine Earth orbit test, the next mission would fly the command module all the way to lunar orbit. They had exactly 16 weeks to prepare. This decision fell squarely on the shoulders of the newly assigned Apollo 8 crew, led by spacecraft commander Frank Borman. Their training schedule was radically compressed. They had to abandon their simulated lunar landings and immediately pivot to mastering the complexities of unproven deep space navigation. This 16-week pivot forced Apollo 8 to serve as the ultimate stress test of human and engineering adaptability. The risk began on the launch pad. The massive Saturn V rocket had only been flown twice before, and never with a human crew. After reaching Earth orbit, the crew faced their first major hurdle, the translunar injection, or TLI. This required the S-4B third-stage engine to reignite perfectly in the vacuum of space to break the grip of Earth's gravity. The engine burned for over 5 minutes. It accelerated the spacecraft from an orbital velocity of 25,500 feet per second to an injection speed of over 35,500 feet per second. Once that engine shut down, the trajectory was locked. There was no quick way to abort back to Earth. The crew was committed to the physics of a 3-day journey across the void. Traveling into deep space presented an entirely new operational challenge. Mission Control had to maintain tracking, communications, and telemetry for a vehicle moving 250,000 miles away. Almost immediately, they encountered unexpected anomalies. Routine venting of boil-off and wastewater from the environmental control system acted like tiny thrusters, pushing the spacecraft slightly off its expected path. This created a severe operational headache. Every time the crew vented water, the ground computers required up to 8 solid hours of tracking data just to gather enough velocity information to accurately recalculate their orbit. The environment around the moon presented its own unknowns. Ground controllers discovered unexpected wobbles in the spacecraft's lunar trajectory, caused by hidden mass concentrations, dense pockets of gravity beneath the lunar surface. Deep space navigation became a dynamic, real-time response to these unseen environmental variables. The most critical moment of the entire mission was lunar orbit insertion. To slow the spacecraft enough to be captured by the moon's gravity, the crew had to fire their main engine. But orbital mechanics dictated this burn had to happen on the far side of the moon, completely severing all radio contact with Earth. They were relying entirely on the unproven Service Propulsion System, or SPS engine. If that engine failed to fire, or fired for the wrong duration, Apollo 8 would be slingshotted past the moon and trapped in a permanent solar orbit. This declassified report reveals a disastrous anomaly during that blind burn, a sudden drop in chamber pressure. An inadequate pre-flight bleed procedure left a helium bubble trapped in the oxidizer feed line, which the engine ingested upon firing. The crew's survival in total isolation depended on the hardware's ability to autonomously swallow that trapped gas, recover its pressure, and complete the burn. When Apollo 8 emerged from behind the moon and re-established contact, the relief in mission control was palpable. The SPS engine had held. The crew was safely in orbit, and immediately began capturing the first close-up human photography of the lunar surface. The Earthrise photograph and the Christmas Eve broadcast were the spontaneous, human results of flawless mechanical engineering. To return home, they had to clear one final deep space engineering hurdle. The trans-Earth injection burn required that same SPS engine to reignite perfectly one last time to break them out of lunar orbit. Exploration requires both the vision to look outward and the mechanical reliability to return home safely. The return trip concluded with a violent re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. Hitting the atmosphere at lunar return velocities, the command module's heat shield was tested to its absolute thermal limits. The spacecraft survived the inferno, successfully splashing down in the Pacific Ocean and confirming the structural integrity of the command module. Reviewing this official flight evaluation summary, the mission validated several critical hardware systems in actual spaceflight conditions. It proved the deep space navigation protocols, the capability of the Saturn V, and the reliability of the SPS engine. Apollo 8 was a massive risk, but it was a calculated one. By proving these systems at lunar distances, it served as the evidence-led proof of concept that directly paved the path for Apollo 11 just 7 months later. Thanks for watching this production from Cosmora HQ. If you want more evidence-led space documentaries, like, comment, and subscribe.